Jagrudev, so thank you for joining us today. So, context awareness is a lesson. Knowing the terrain, rivals, cultural norms, and Ramayana matters greatly. How do you train leaders to be contextually aware in spiritual work, and how do Vedic rituals shift across regions reflecting context? Jagrudev, yes. Context awareness is vital in art of living leadership training. Now, new center leads undergo immersion, visiting local communities, understanding social norms, culture, religious sentiments and listening deeply before launching programs. They observe regional dynamics like language, caste, festivals, so as not to offend but to adapt. Gurudev's projects in conflict zones show extreme sensitivity to culture, avoiding doctrinal or political overtones, emphasizing shared human values. This sensitivity is cultivated by reflection sessions, feedback, cultural exchange, and humility to adapt rather than impose. In Ramayana, when Rama visits different forests, kingdoms, he adjusts his approach, respectful to sages, courteous to local kings, and careful of customs that teaches leaders no one size fits all. In Vedic practice, regional variations in ritual like mantra accents, local customs, minor procedural differences are accepted within Sanskrit core. Priests study Panchanga, Agama texts, local traditions, and adjust accordingly. Example: regional festival names, local deities. Before performing humas in a new region, priests often consult local elders to understand sensitivities. The institution may adopt smriti or local law for region specific practices while upholding Vedic core. Apprentices are taught Mimamsa, Vyavahara law so they can adapt rituals correctly to context. The Ramayana is often recited with local dialect touches, making it accessible without losing essence. Now, ethical alliances and choosing partners carefully is another principle in the epic. Alliances with Vibhishana, Monkey, Sugriva, etc. are and were critical. How do your organizations weigh alliances with NGOs, governments, or other religious groups ethically, and how do Vedic institutions form partnerships? Jayada, we emphasize value alignment over convenience in art of living before partnering with another institution or government body. The core values of transparency, nonviolence, respect for diversity are assessed. Sometimes we choose not to partner if the other's practices conflict with our ethical code. The alliance is formed only when mission and means align. We also have MOUs or memoranda outlining rules and values, conflict resolution clauses, and periodic review. In spiritual work, partner NGOs, in civil institutions, local governments often join for disaster relief, education, women's empowerment, but always with clarity on boundaries, spiritual versus political, inclusion versus proselytism. From the Ramayana, Vibhishana's alliance was accepted only because he renounced evil, aligning with Dharma. That teaches us we don't align with someone just for strength. The principles matter. In Vedic tradition, alliances are carefully vetted. A temple might accept a cooperation with other temples, NGOs, or cultural bodies, but will ensure no ritual compromise, no interfaith proselytism, no commercialization that contradicts Dharma. Joint festivals or Ramayana events are only done with organizations of a good repute. Sometimes prayers are held invoking Ganesha or Vedic invocation to bless the partnership. If a partner strays, communication and correction precede severing ties. Scriptures like Manusmriti warn against alliances with adharmic groups. So Vedic institutions often have advisory boards, pundits, acharyas who examine partner credentials. Now, balance between firmness and flexibility is a needed leadership quality. In Ramayana, Rama is compassionate but sometimes firm banishment of Surpanakha judgment. How do you guide leaders in your organizations to balance these states, and how do rituals reflect this balance? Jaguar, in Art of Living, leaders are taught Swadharma or knowing when to hold ground and when to adapt. Training includes scenario based role plays, times when one must uphold a core value uncompromisingly, and times when one must listen and adjust. The principle is flexibility within non negotiables. Gurudev's vision talks of Niti versus Neti, principle versus policy. Policy can adapt, a principle remains firm. In real work, sometimes a policy must change, example, COVID constraints, but respect, ethics, and dignity remain non negotiable. A leader may blend schedule but not compromise honesty or safety. Ritually, this plays out in timings versus mantras. The muhurat or the fixed time is firm, but if weather interferes, there may be permissible windows. The Vedic texts allow slight flexibility when circumstances demand, but the sanctity of mantras is non negotiable. In temple governance, small adjustments like festival date shifts, resource changes are allowed, but core rituals, daily pujas, and correctness must be maintained. Priest training emphasizes shraddha or devotion with the yukti or smartness, that is, devotion aligned with the practicality. Rama's mixture of forgiveness to Vibhishana and firmness toward Ravana is often cited in temple discourses to illustrate this balance. Now, time management and prioritization are as essential. In Ramayana, Rama had to decide what to do first: search for Sita, build bridges, plan war. How do your spiritual institutions teach prioritization, especially with the limited resources, time, and in Vedic rituals? How is timing prioritized? Jagadev, time is the most precious resource in art of living leadership training. We teach planning methods, daily vision sheets, weekly reviews, delegation lists, priority matrix, urgent versus important. Leaders are taught to designate focus hours for deep work, meditation, planning, protect them, and schedule tasks. We also teach energy management, aligning major tasks to when one is most alert. In spiritual courses, participants learn not to overcommit, balance seva, teaching meditation to prevent burnout. Gurudev emphasizes doing less but with more presence. In retreats, tasks are announced with sequences: meditations first, then service, then discourse, and modeling prioritization. In Vedic ritual work, timing is critical. Pujas and homas are logged to Muhurata. One cannot arbitrarily shift them. Ritual schedulers map the days as sandhyas, break times, cleaning offerings. For large festivals, key rituals are placed at the best Muhurata and other tasks scheduled around them. Priests must prioritize mantras, fire tending, food distribution over side tasks. If resource constraints exist, tasks like floral decorations or auxiliary activities may wait, but core rituals are non negotiable. In temple management, decision matrices are used, maintenance, rituals, outreach prioritized based on their impact on devotees. And Dharma, the Ramayana is an example of not delaying war despite many distractions, is often cited to reinforce prioritization. Now, setting example through leadership ties back to many earlier points. But how do you consciously use role modeling in training new leaders in your institutions? And which rituals or observances emphasize leaders as examples in Vedic tradition? In Art of Living, newcomers observe senior teachers in action, how they meditate, meet challenges, interact with volunteers, manage stress. Leadership training includes reverse roles. Juniors lead small tasks while seniors serve them. So, leaders experience both sides. Instructors are also asked to consciously share struggles and inner practices, not just success stories. This transparency helps us show that leaders are human and practicing. At the start of major programs, experienced teachers often begin with a silent mantra or prayer, implicitly showing the reliance on inner anchoring. Every teacher is expected to lead by service, cleaning, mentoring, answering calls, not being above mundane work. Leaders publicly take accountability when things go wrong, reinforcing trust. Now, in Vedic tradition, when a head priest enters, he often circumambulates the temple, bows to the deity, and trees, reminding everyone of humility. In festivals, the chief priest leads ceremonies, participates in menial tasks, offering water, lighting lamps, setting the tone. Many temples celebrate Sri Guru Vandana and Acharya Puja, where leaders receive respect, but also reaffirm their duty and humility. In ashram, senior acharyas may spend time chanting with juniors, cleaning the precincts. This model that no task is beneath a leader. The Ramayana's depiction of Rama performing even forest labor or serving sages is often recalled in temple discourses to underscore that leadership must be lived, not just priests. No, consistency in behavior is a vital lesson. Being steady in values regardless of circumstances in spiritual organizations. How do you instill consistency and how do Vedic rituals reinforce constancy? Consistency is cultivated through disciplined daily sadhana, monitoring, peer accountability, and culture. In Art of Living, every teacher or center is encouraged to maintain daily meditation, regular courses, punctuality, and truthful communication. Deviations are discussed in leadership circles, remedied via reflections, course corrections. Gurudev emphasizes character is shown when no one is watching, not just on stage. Regular reviews, feedback, self journaling help track consistency. Over time, consistency becomes reputation and trust. Also, the practice of repeating values in satsangs and wisdom teachings reinforces consistency. Each session returns to core principles, ensuring no drift. Now, in Vedic life, daily rituals like Sandhya, Agnihotra, and Mantra Japa must be consistent. A priest who misses these, even occasionally, sacrifices spiritual authority. The temple also follows fixed calendars, festival cycles, offering routines. Rituals like daily Homa or Nitya Puja are done without fail, even in harsh conditions, asserting consistency. Additionally, periodic Shuddhi rites purify deviations, and Chaturmasya periods serve as times of stricter discipline. Oral tradition also admonishes Yagya Punya Sammeha, a mantram recited daily as a reminder of constancy. The Ramayanas is an example of Rama maintaining his vow even in exile with dignity and discipline every day is retooled to emphasize that consistency is a spiritual power. Now, one of the lessons is governance and justice. Rama's rule in Ayodhya is often idolized for fairness, equity, rule of law. How do your organizations strive for fair governance internally, and how do Vedic institutions apply justice in temple administration and ritual decisions? In Art of Living, governance is ideally transparent, participatory, and rooted in service. Decision making bodies, committees, boards include diverse voices, seniors, junior volunteers, program leaders, so that policies reflect a ground reality. There are written charters, code of conduct, grievances redressal mechanisms if disputes arise, an ethics committee or elder council reviews. There is also regular audit, internal review of finances, accountability to donors, and open sharing of mission, expenses, decisions at annual gatherings. This fosters trust and legitimacy. In our spiritual projects, too, fairness in distributing opportunities, teaching assignments, resources is critical. When someone feels ignored or biased, we encourage dialogue, transparency, review. In Vedic institutions, temple governance often has advisory councils. The Mandala, Panchayat, and Mahasabha compose of priests, scholars, and community elders. They oversee ritual allocations, temple fund usage, appointment, succession. Decisions are supposed to be made by consensus or majority, following Dharma Shastra norms. If disputes arise over ritual precedence, priest roles, and donation distribution, the Sabha deliberates, often citing scripture, localization, past tradition, and fairness. Ritual precedence is assigned based on lineage, training, purity, and seniority, but with respect to merit. The ideal is no priest or donor should feel unjustly treated. The authority is answerable to dharma and devotees. Now, caring for team and welfare is another principle. In the Ramayana, Rama ensured food, rest, morale for his army. In spiritual organizations, how do you care for the well being of volunteers, teachers, and staff? And in Vedic settings, how is the welfare of priests, temple workers, etc., handled? Caring for people is a spiritual duty. In Art of Living, we provide mentoring, emotional support, debriefing sessions, rest periods, and health checkups for volunteers and staff. In long programs, the volunteers rotate between intense roles and restful ones. There are welfare funds for health, emergencies, education, counseling services, and recognition of personal needs. Also, we encourage spiritual practice, inner care, meditation, silence retreats, and breaks. We teach that taking care of oneself is not selfish but necessary to serve others sustainably. We also hold sharing circles where people voice stress, grievances, and emotional challenges, and senior teachers or peer counselors help with empathy and guidance. In temple institutions, provision is made for prasadam or lodging, medical care, stipend, clothing, and support for priests and temple workers. For those who live in temple premises, basic amenities like food, clean water, shelter are maintained. In many traditions, when a priest is ill or aging, there is a punyadan support. In some sanstans, retirement homes or support programs exist for elderly priests. Also, if a temple is in remote location, arrangements are made for transport, seasonal allowances. During festivals, extra rest breaks, relief priests, rotation of tasks are organized. The Ramayana story of Rama ensuring rest and refreshment even in the forest is often invoked as a model. Now, wise counsel and advices is one of the principles in the epic. Jambavan, Vibhishana, Valmiki's counsel matter. How do your organizations incorporate advisory wisdom, mentoring councils, and in Vedic institutions? How is the role of Pandits, Acharyas, Sabhas in advising structure? We emphasize humility by valuing counsel. In Art of Living, mentors, senior teachers, alumni provide guidance to new leaders. There are mentoring cells, periodic review sessions, and spiritual elders who review plans. Decisions proposals often go to wisdom circle, a small team of diverse experience who critique suggest alternatives, highlight blind spots. This helps avoid ego trap and tunnel vision. Also, we encourage peer accountability. No decision is isolated in bigger ventures. Wisdom from retired leaders or specialist consultants is invited within no fixed status but valued input. Now, in Vedic tradition, Pandits and Acharyas are guardians of scriptural correctness and tradition. They are consulted whenever ritual decisions, temple policies, doctrinal interpretations, or disputes arise. A Gurukul or Sansthan may have a council Acharya Sabha that reviews ritual innovations, new temple proposals or modifications. Students and younger priests are present to elders. Elders review, sometimes correct. This dynamic mirrors the counsel given to Rama before war. Suggestions weighed, plans refined. The Vedic text Manusmriti, Dharmashastras, and Smritis themselves serve as inherited counsel. In temple boards, the advisory council is often more respected than purely administrative authority. Learning from opposition is a valuable management lesson. Rama even learns indirectly from Ravana's faults. Kekai's complaint shows what to avoid. How do you encourage practitioners to learn from adversarial feedback, critics, opposition, and how do Vedic rituals or teachings incorporate that principle? Jagadev, we teach that criticism can be a mirror. In Art of Living, feedback loops are institutionalized. After programs, participants give feedback, including criticism. Leaders are trained to listen without defensiveness, introspect, and extract growth lessons. When opposition emerges, critics, skeptics, the approach is respectful dialogue, not attack. Gurudev often speaks about listening to critics with compassion as they may point out blind spots. In courses, participants discuss their internal resistance, shadow self, and consider negative feedback as growth pointers. This attitude transforms the opposition from an enemy to a teacher. In Vedic tradition, takes caution that negative feedback is precious. If a pandit or disciple points out procedural error, the teacher must accept graciously. Some temples perform Shanti Homa when internal disputes intensify, acknowledging purification of collective tension in ritual criticism. If someone says a Homa is done wrongly, a re examination is done. Teachings are not held as infallible. The stories of Ravana's downfall due to arrogance and Rama's humility in forgiving Vibhishana are used to teach that adversaries can reveal one's flaws. Teachers are told if your opponent speaks well, accept; if poorly, correct gently. This encourages learning rather than retaliation. Now, knowing when to show strength versus restraint is subtle. In the epic, Rama shows might or holds back as needed. How do you teach that discernment in your spiritual organization, and how are such dynamics managed in ritual and temple decisions? Discernment or viveka is cultivated through inner practice and reflection. In Art of Living leadership training, we simulate conflict scenarios, when to enforce policy strictly, when flexibility is better. Leaders learn to sense when people need firmness for safety, values, and when they need empathy and space. Meditation and silence sharpen inner clarity. Gurudev's wisdom teaches that moral authority must not be used indiscriminately. One must hold restraint until action is necessary. Leaders are reminded power without discernment is ego. In real operations, there are thresholds. Repeated lapses may require firmness. One off mistakes may merit guidance. The pattern is based on principle. In Vedic rituals, some rules are strict, like mantras must be exact. Others allow minor flexibility, like placement of flowers, timings within windows. The priests are taught to distinguish essential ritual boundaries from peripheral ones. If a devotee requests a deviation, the priest examines whether it violates core rule. If yes, firmness; if not, accommodated. In administrative decisions in temples or sanstans, example new events or expansions, the leadership sometimes holds back until consensus forms rather than pressing ahead. The story of Rama delaying initial battle in Lanka to give Vibhishana time to join is often cited as wise restraint. In priestly councils, one may hold silence until truth emerges rather than forcing debate. Now, time to act and execution versus endless planning. Effective execution is one of Bansal's lessons. In spiritual institutions, how do you prevent perpetual planning and ensure timely action? And in Vedic ritual work, how do you ensure smooth execution? Jagadev, execution is where many good plans stall. In Art of Living, every plan is broken into actionable steps. with deadlines, responsibilities, and monitoring checkpoints. Quarterly goals are converted into weekly sprints, reviews are held, and leaders habitually ask what can be done today rather than waiting for perfect conditions. Gurudev's is teaching stress begin with what you have, where you are in programs. The first module is always implemented early, then refined rather than delayed. Also, accountability culture helps teams present progress publicly, hurdles are shared, corrective support given. When delay occurs, two root causes are examined, resources, clarity, motivation not blamed. In Vedic ritual work, precision and timing are crucial. When planning a homa or festival, the schedule is finalized well ahead, materials procured, fees allocated, and logistics set. On event day, a Kendra Sampark oversees execution, assigning roles and backup. Any deviation, be it rain or delay, is managed via contingency protocols, alternate muhurata, flexible roles. Ritual rehearsals may happen when scale is big. In temple programs, local branches replicate core rituals under supervision. Execution is enforced because rituals can't be arbitrarily delayed. Missing a muhurat may reduce efficacy. So the culture demands a rigid discipline. Stories of Rama's troops executing plans under adversity, of storm demons are cited to inspire resolve and execution. Now, moral courage is another lesson, choosing right even under threat. Rama stood against Ravana despite odds. How do you cultivate moral courage in practitioners? And how do Vedic institutions stand up to external pressures like political, social, while preserving dharma? The moral courage is forged through inner conviction, practice, and guidance. In art of living courses include modules on values like truth, nonviolence, compassion, and real life application like storytelling, dilemmas, or role plays where participants must take stands. Mentorship supports those who speak truth in adversity. Leaders are encouraged to take small stands of transparency, refusing shortcuts to build muscle. Meditation anchors inner strength so external pressures don't override conscience. Gurudev often cites that courage is not absence of fear but acting despite fear. The culture encourages speaking truth respectfully, resisting unethical demands, funding pressure politics, always with the clarity, not confrontation. Temples and Vedic bodies at times face political, social, or fiscal pressures, example land regulation or interference. The institutional ethos must be rooted in dharma, guided by acharyas who resist compromising rituals or principles. If external pressure asks for ritual change for appeasement, the temple may refuse to negotiate within scriptural limits. Some temples maintain autonomy by being trustee structures, distributing authority, maintaining transparency. So, undue coercion is harder in such cases. Legal counsel is sometimes used, but principle is not compromised. The example of Rama refusing to bow to Ravana's demands, upholding dharma despite threat, is teaching that moral courage is essential even for institutions. Now, self discipline is vital, controlling speech, desires, and impulses. Rama practiced a strict self control. How do your organizations nurture self discipline among leaders and practitioners? And in Vedic life, how is self discipline inculcated? Derivative self discipline is cultivated via sadhana, structure, and accountability. In art of living, participants are encouraged to maintain daily routines, meditation, breath work, silence, study, and service. Leaders commit to personal discipline, contracts, timing, work, rest. In retreats, participants are asked to follow schedules strictly, practice silence, abstain from indulgence, which strengthens willpower. Mentors check in on consistency, and groups often support one another. Gurudev's guidance often reminds that discipline is a form of love for one's purpose for others. Additionally, during public service projects, leaders sometimes take temporary vows. No phone, early rising to sharpen discipline. In Vedic life, discipline is non negotiable. Priests maintain brahmacharya, daily sandhya, agnihotra, japa, vrata, and observances. The Chaturmasya period is a time of stricter observance. Students in Gurukulas undergo a regimen of study, rituals, physical austerities. Even simple tasks like waking before dawn, fasting on Ekadashi, silence periods are disciplined practices. Ritual purity, correct mantra recitation, restraint in speech, all sharpen inner discipline. The Ramayana is an example of Rama restraining his desire, walking through forests, abiding moral limits under temptation, is cited frequently to guide disciplined living. Now, leadership through service is a principle. Leadership is not dominance but service. How do you embed this ethos in your organization, and how do Vedic teachings connect leadership to service? We cultivate the paradigm leader is the first servant. Leaders are expected to begin and end their day assisting, serving, and being accessible. In centers, a leader may clean the floors, help in the kitchen, be part of mundane tasks, not just to give orders. This builds humility and respect in courses, modules, and Seva leadership teach that true authority is earned by serving, supporting, and uplifting others. The Art of Living Seva projects like care, education, environment are led not by hierarchy but by serving mindset. Gurudev often says the highest position is to serve others and lifting them. In Vedic tradition, leadership is inherently service to the divine and community. A Purohit serves God's temple devotees, not his own ego. The head priest often performs service tasks, blesses devotees, and works for the temple's upkeep. In ashrams, the Guru spends time in simple tasks, caring, attending to disciples. In texts like Bhagavad Gita, Krishna teaches karma yoga, selfless action as a model. The example of Rama serving citizens during difficult exile life to uphold a dharma is repeatedly invoked. True leadership is a service. Now, clarity of roles and responsibilities is a managerial lesson. In the Ramayanas, as armies in temple functions, clarity helps avoid chaos. How do you define the roles clearly in your institutions and in Vedic ritual teams? How is the role clarity enforced? Jayadev, role clarity is the foundation in art of living. Every project begins with a role mapping. Who does what, by when, and dependencies and handovers. Written charters, role descriptions, communication protocols are set. Volunteers join with the clarity about expectations, reporting lines, accountability. If someone is unclear, confusion spreads. Leaders are trained to recheck clarity at start, mid, and end of task. Now, in training, role swap exercises help people understand adjacent roles and boundaries, encouraging empathy. Also, in spirit of humility, leaders revisit and clarify roles frequently, not assume everyone knows. In Vedic ritual teams, roles are rigid. Hotri, Udagatri, Adavaryu, Brahman, Pratipatha, Sutaka, etc. Each knows precisely when to chant what, when to pour offerings, tend fire, clean. Mistakes can invalidate ritual. Therefore, before homas or yajnas, a rehearsal or briefing is done. Written or oral ritual schedules specify times and tasks. If someone is absent, backup priests know roles. Temple administration to assign priests, assistants, cleaners, musicians with explicit duties of daily puja, festival upkeep. Deviations are rare. This role clarity comes from Vedic training, lineage, and apprenticeship. The Ramayana coordination of army units, scouts, bridge builders illustrates role clarity in action, so it is often quoted in discourses to emphasize disciplined role definition. There.